afternoon. Welcome to the House Higher Education Budget Committee. In today's meeting, we will have a bill hearing on HB 2375, as well as a presentation from Washburn University regarding their budget presentation. Before doing so, I'd like to see if there's any members represented online. Trevor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Only Elaine Frisbee for the Kansas Board of Regents is in WebEx.
Okay, thank you. If there's any additional members appearing before WebEx, just please make note to the committee assistant, Phyllis. Thank you. To start off, we'll have a brief by Joel Walters with the Revisor's Office over HB 2375. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. House Bill 2375 concerns licenses that the Behavioral Sciences Regulatory Board, which I'll refer to as BSRB, that they have. Currently, BSRB licenses baccalaureate and master's social work applicants who have a degree from an accredited college and university, including completing a social work program recognized and approved by BSRB. They have to also pass an exam and satisfy the agency that the applicant merits public trust. So what this bill would do would authorize BSRB to grant a temporary candidacy baccalaureate or master social work program license. And this would be those folks who have received the baccalaureate or master's degree from a program in candidacy status. So that program would be in the process of getting accredited by the accredited agency recognized by BSRB, and the bill specifically provides that this would include an online program. So what these folks have to do is they have to demonstrate the receipt of the degree, including the program, the social work program in candidacy status from the accredited body. They have to pass the exam like someone regularly does. They also have to submit their completed form in a manner provided by BSRB, so that like they would post that and you would have to fill out that form. You also have to satisfy the same thing. You have to satisfy BSRB that the applicant merits the public trust, and then you have to pay the temporary candidacy fee, which is not more than $75, and it's on page 6 in lines 32 and 34 of the bill, if you wanted to refer to that. The license, this temporary candidacy license, is valid for 24 months and can be extended upon the showing that the program remains in candidacy status and paying another $75 fee. It clarifies that the social worker cannot represent themselves as an LBSW or LMSW, but they do represent themselves as licensed by temporary candidacy license. They're further required to practice under supervision, and they're also not required to complete continuing ed. So no continuing ed, but they have to have practice under supervision. Once the program is accredited, then those baccalaureate and master social workers, they can go ahead and receive a permanent license upon the payment of the applicable fee. And it depends on those fees are in the bill on page 6. If you just had a question on the specific fee, you'll see it says they cannot charge more than, and I might point out that $75 was not more than 75. I'm sorry, it's not automatically set by 75 in the bill. It's not more than 75. Now, if BSRB finds out the program has not received accreditation, so they've gone through the process and they are not going to be accredited, BSRB will immediately revoke the licenses and notify the licensee of the revocation. And then the bill specifically says that the temporary candidacy baccalaureate and master's social work licenses could be the online baccalaureate, online master's and program from the University of St. Mary's in Leavenworth. So it could include others, but that we are specifically saying that the provisions of this for that temporary candidacy license applies to that school. That's currently, it's my understanding, that's currently looking for their accreditation. I'd be pleased to stand for any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee? Representative Smith.
Forgive me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Young lady, forgive me, I can't hear very well, so I didn't hear a lot of what you said, but social workers, it's hard for them to stay on the job for a career, isn't it? It's just the work is so difficult that they say, hey, I could do something else and not beat myself up saying that.
Sir, I don't really have the background to answer that question. David Fye, who's the executive director of BSRB, would probably be more appropriate to answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, we can come back to that question and make sure that's answered. Any other questions from the committee? All right, if not, thank you, Jill, for your brief on HB 2375. Next up, I'd like to welcome, committee member, Representative Wassinger, would like to, as you deem appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Representative Barb Wassinger, 111th District. Thank you for the chance to speak on this bill. House Bill 2375 is a fairly simple bill that amends the KSA 2022 Supplement 65-6308 to allow for online students to be able to apply for licensure with the Behavioral Services Regulatory Board, otherwise known as BSRB. Currently, the standard is that instruction must be in person to be allowed to apply for a social work license. Given that COVID has changed most every aspect of our lives, it's disheartening to see that online students have not been included as before. In particular, the bill does specifically imagine, but not limiting to, the online Masters of Social Work program at the University of St. Mary's in Leavenworth, Kansas, and also apply to, but not be limited to, the online baccalaureate social work program at the University of St. Mary in Leavenworth, Kansas as well. This is not the first time that I have come head to head with the BSRB. Last year, students that were graduating from Fort Hays State University, Masters of Social Work, had been told while they were in school, the school had actually been told that they would be able to get temporary licensing when they graduated. Once they started to apply, they were denied by the BSRB. It was not a good situation. I was, however, able in the last minute to get something put into a conference committee at the end of the year and got it into omnibus. Not exactly the right place for it. So this is a better place for it to amend this statute so that it includes this. The other issue that we were having was with Fort Hays. They said they weren't fully accredited yet. They were 6 months approximately from getting their full accreditation. And the other problem with St. Mary's is they're saying, number one, they're online students. They should not get licensure. And then number two is because they're lower down in that accrediting process. This fixes this. This allows these students to get to work and help the Kansans that we need to have social workers involved with. This helps and identifies who these people are, and they're fine with that. Identifies that it's temporary licensing, and they will continue to have to do other things to get full licensure. I ask that you go ahead and pass this through. This has been a very difficult time. And by the way, I made promises to the nuns at the University of St. Mary as a graduate of the University of St. Catherine, and I will not lie to them. I told them that I would help them. And this is not just for St. Mary's. This is for online students. And when you think about all the people that are doing things online right now, it's really important that we make sure that this gets changed and that we specifically mention St. Mary's. And this year we don't have to do Fort Hays because they're all taken care of. But with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions from the committee? Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative, it's good to see you today, and
Thank you.
you were able to take away from your committee assignment.
I know my chair is very kind and very forgiving. He allows me to do that.
So I remember a year ago, we had, a number of discussions that were going on. And correct that. You said does this take care of exactly what we did a year ago?
No,
This is on top of.
this is on top of that.
Okay.
Yes. Very much so. Yes.
Any other questions, Representative Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, did you say these were temporary license?
Yes.
And how long would temporary be?
There, all the temporary licenses, and I'm sure that the director could correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the licenses are for 2 years. And if something doesn't turn out properly at the BSRB's behest, they don't get accredited and they're found faulty with anything, then they can't reapply and they won't be able to continue to work until they fulfill all the requirements that are necessary.
Something I've learned and something all of us in the room have learned, that there's no substitute for experience. So if they're out in the field for 2 years, they've gotten much more out of it than what they would have gotten if they were in the classroom for 2 years. Just a thought. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, thank you, Representative Wassinger, for your proponent testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate being here.
Next, I'd like to welcome Matt Lindsay with the Kansas Independent College Association. Matt, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Good to see you again. My name is Matt Lindsay. I'm the president of the Kansas Independent College Association, and here as a proponent for House Bill 2375. It remedies a frustrating statutory and regulatory barrier to students pursuing a college degree in social work in an online format at certain institutions, particularly one of mine. As a reminder, I work for all 20 of the nonprofit colleges in the state. And in addition to my testimony today, I want to make sure I direct you. You have written testimony from Dr. Joseph Squilacci. He is the program director of social work at the University of St. Mary. He's teaching a class right now, so he was unable to join us. But he has some useful information directly from St. Mary. Let me talk about this from sort of two important pieces. One is what I call the catch-22. So University of St. Mary is pursuing accreditation for their online Masters of Social Work program, an accreditation from the national accreditor, the ksWE, the Council on Social Work Education. That process takes about 3 years from start to finish. In the meantime, you have to demonstrate all along the way, annually reporting on faculty you've hired, program quality, curriculum development, a number of metrics designed to both keep you moving forward and make sure that a program is developing that is of high quality, that is serving students adequately. That last part's important, serving students adequately. You have to have students in order to demonstrate learning outcomes that the CSWE can look at and go, yes, your program, your curriculum is doing what we want social worker, providing the type of education we want social workers to have. So you have to have students in order to get accredited effectively, and it takes 3 years. Kansas statutes and regulations right now prohibit a graduate of a online-only institution that is still in candidacy, so in that 3-year window of getting accreditation, from receiving a license. So a student at the University of Mary cannot recruit students in Kansas and say, come to our school, we will have a great Masters of Social Work program, because they can't commit that those students can get a license. What student would enroll in a program, spend the money, the time, the energy, without an ability to then practice once they are done? And the University of Mary ethically says, well, we can't commit to recruiting students into our program if we can't provide that promise to them as well, that if they do the work, they can earn a license. Kansas is one of the few states where this is true. So the University of St. Mary's current approach is to say our online program, we were going to have to look at educating students in other states online. Given the needs for social workers in Kansas, particularly in rural communities, we are, by not using the University of St. Mary's program, hamstringing our own state's effort to provide more mental health supports, more social work supports throughout the state. So there's this catch-22. The law currently does not allow graduates to get a license if they finish a program like the University of St. Mary that is online only. But to get accreditation, which would be required to then get the license, you have to have students. This bill 2375 seeks to address that and fix that problem. The second is the comment I would make is about the online piece, and you heard from Representative Wassinger a moment ago about, we have learned over the last 3.5 years of the value of online education in specific formats. And it turns out that most of the master's and graduate level work in social work nationwide has moved to an online approach. That is an increasingly important modality for delivering that kind of work in order to educate people where they are. Current Kansas statutes are behind the times in making sure that we provide a pathway for licensure for students who are going through online programs. And this bill would help to address that, not just for St. Mary, but for any higher education institution in the state of Kansas. With that, I'm glad to answer questions. I hope you will pass out 2375 favorably, and thank you for your work.
Thank you, Matt. Questions from the committee? Representative Smith.
Mr. Leader. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My daughter got her counseling degree from Fort Hays State. And, most of it was online, but they had to show up a few days. I think every year they had to show up a few days. I think that's a good idea, even for what we're saying here, that we show up a little bit and talk about what's going on. And, I know it's hard for a teacher to take a couple of days and go to Fort Hays, and it'd be hard to go to Leavenworth, but I think it'd be well worth the while if this bill passes. I think it's something we ought to think about. So, just a thought. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Lindsay? If not, Matthew, thank you for your testimony today. Next, I'd like to welcome proponent testimony from David Fye, Director of the Behavioral Science Regulatory Board. Director Fye, welcome back to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm David Fye. I'm the Executive Director for the Behavioral Sciences Regulatory Board, and I'm happy to come before you today with proponent testimony and encourage you to pass House Bill 2375. I think the two other proponents have already spoke about some of the intricacies involved in this. I'll just go ahead and give a little historical context and then provide some information to some of the questions that have been asked as well. Just as some background, we are the licensing body for the state of Kansas that licenses most of the state's mental health professionals, including social work. And so some of the individuals have talked about the accrediting process for social work programs. The BSRB is required to follow the statutes and the regulations in terms of licensing. And the current statutes and regulations provide direction to us on what programs should be licensed and what qualifications to be met. And so the license statutes and regulations indicate if a program is accredited by the national accrediting body, the Council of Social Work Education, if it's CSWE accredited, we can expedite those applicants for licensure. And if they come from a program that is not CSWE accredited, there are alternative regulations that have to be met to make sure that we have followed the regulations to see if they receive their education from a program that meets those qualifications. And one of the requirements that has been in regulation at least the last 15 years is that if it's from a non-CSWE accredited program, then that program must have required at least half of the coursework to be received while the student was physically present at the school. And so, as other individuals have mentioned, for newly created online schools that are going through that accreditation process, you get caught in the process of that 3-year period because the schools are pursuing accreditation, but they're going to have individuals come through the program before they are actually accredited, which means you would use the regulations. And for an online school, without that in-person component, those individuals would not be able to meet that standard. And so CSWE says if you reach accreditation, they will backdate the date of accreditation to when your program entered candidacy. And so as a long-term remedy, CSWE looks at it and says, once you've entered candidacy, if you reach the final point, we will consider that program accredited from the point that you entered candidacy. But the Kansas statutes and regulations don't speak to that. And so last year, when the issue became under focus and a spotlight, one of the issues that was talked about was the Fort Hays State program. And what happened with that program predates me a little bit for the BSRB. I've been with the agency for about 2 years, but I understand when the Fort Hays State program was being started, representatives from that university did speak to the previous director, and the individuals from Fort Hays State believed that they had received assurance that their graduates would be able to get licensed. And I believe them in terms of what they understood from those communications. Those were before my time, but I understand when those graduates were seeking licensure, there was initially a look to see did that program reach accreditation. And our licensing specialist believed the program was accredited, but they misread the accrediting information on the website. It was in candidacy for accreditation. And so when we realized that was the issue, we went ahead and held those applicants to look into the issue more clearly to make sure we were following the statutes and the regulations. And so we didn't deny anyone who was applying for licensure then. We didn't reject them. We held them. And then, as was mentioned last year with the legislature, that item was added to the bill to allow us to go ahead and license those individuals from that program. And at that point, we were able to license those individuals as social workers. But we are not opposed to this. And I definitely, from my perspective, I wouldn't want the legislature to think that we are going head to head with any members of the legislature. We see the value in making sure that individuals that come from social work programs are able to get licensed. I think, and I believe the board would be in support of this too. The previous requirements about having a certain amount of their program be in person was put in several years ago, back when online programs are not what they have evolved to today. And the prevalence of online programs is not what we've seen today. So within the last year, the advisory committees that assist the work of the board have had discussions on if that needs to stay in the regulations. And 4 of the professions under the board, including social work, had recommended to the board removing that requirement. And so the language you see before you in this bill is very similar to language that is also in a bill requested by the BSRB this year, House Bill 2340. The online component language is an item that we had submitted for a regulatory change to remove that in-person component. So right now we have a bill before the legislature in House Bill 2340 and also a regulatory change that we have submitted to deal with this issue. But in talking with members of the legislature, our interest, and I believe the board is consistent with this too, is to make sure this issue gets resolved. And so we want to make sure that these individuals coming from the online programs can be licensed too, as long as we're following the statutes and regulations. And so I've communicated with members of the legislature during the budget hearing that if we can resolve these 2 issues as a statute instead of going through the statute and the regulation, I believe that's consistent with the board's position too. So the board is supportive of this bill in terms of having both of these items together. As I mentioned, the board requested submission of House Bill 2340. That is a bill that is currently in the House Health and Human Services Committee. It had a hearing earlier this week, and it actually was starting to be worked in committee yesterday. And so they did a couple of amendments, and I expect they will continue to work that bill out of committee, or at least do further work on it today, is what they communicated in that meeting yesterday. In my testimony, I kind of walked through a little bit more of the history in terms of the accreditation process and the issues. But what I want the committee to really understand is that the BSRB really wants to partner with the legislature and the citizens of Kansas to make sure that we have appropriate standards to make sure that the citizens of Kansas are protected, but to also make sure that we're following the law in terms of who we can license and who we will not be able to license. And so that's why I wanted to clarify some of these items today, but also to make sure that you were aware I'm a proponent of this testimony. The board is also supportive of these issues as well. In terms of a few more items, there were some questions. The revisor provided an explanation of the bill, and she mentioned that the cap on the fee for this new temporary license would be set at $75. The board is supportive of setting that amount in regulation at $50. So it would be a $50 fee for 2 years. And then if someone was still in a program that was in candidacy for accreditation at the end of those 2 years, the language in both 2340 and also this bill before you, 2375, allows for that to be extended additional time if their program would still be in candidacy status after the end of those 2 years. Additionally, there was a question about turnover from social workers, and we have heard that. We have heard that it's a difficult occupation. And one of the items we've included in House Bill 2340 is in an effort to allow individuals who are currently licensed to stay licensed. And we also have some language in that bill to help individuals who allowed their license to expire to come back to the profession more easily. So I have heard similar concerns to what you alluded to, but I think some of those items are addressed in the other bill that we have before the legislature this year. And then in terms of the question about should there still be an in-person component and the value of that, I want you to know there was a healthy discussion by the board and the advisory committees about should there still be an in-person component. And I think what the discussion of the board ultimately boiled down to is there is a value in having an in-person component, but is it necessary and should it be mandatory for someone to get a license? And I think valuing those concerns with workforce shortages and other aspects, the board was saying that there is a value for that for sure, but the allowing these programs to do the face-to-face contact by screen or in person, they felt like there were enough checks in place that would still be able to be good qualifications for licensure without having a mandatory in-person requirement. So with that, I will go ahead and end my testimony and encourage your support of passage of this bill.
Thank you, Director Fye, for your proponent testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Representative Rogers.
Thank you. And I probably could ask this with Representative Wasser too, but I guess this is a simple bill, and right. And so all it's basically doing is bringing our statutes up, correct? I'm not sure who. I know. Probably shouldn't talk.
Representative Rogers, who would you like to address your question?
Well, I think maybe to both to make sure we both have a good understanding, because I want to make sure I'm not sure.
Director Fye, if you'd like to take a crack at it, then we'll.
It's just that simple. We're just getting up to date because of online. That wasn't in the statute before. Is that correct?
There's really and there's two pieces to this. One is to deal with that online piece. The other is that 3-year accreditation process. It is helping individuals be able to practice while their program is still going through that accreditation process. So,
Mr. Chairman, so with those two in there, the challenge you have is solved, correct, Representative Wassinger?
I had that twofold
Right.
problem with but the most important thing, first of all, is to allow online students to apply for licensure, which brings the whole statute up to date.
Okay.
And then the other thing was to specifically address the University of St. Mary's.
Right, Mr. Chairman. So I guess the other question then, if we have other schools to come on board, do we have to specifically name them, or I was trying to read the bill, and so that would bring everybody else along. I don't want to sort of open this back up again.
No, it says shall not be limited to the social work program at the University of St. Mary, and shall also apply to but not be limited to. So in both places it says
Right.
Shall apply to but not be limited to, which means we're going to encompass any online students.
So the way you understand it, is as new programs come along, that is the encompassing part, not
Yes.
correct. Okay.
there's one little distinction, and that is the language of the bill describes these new temporary licenses as in candidacy or accreditation. So when a school is seeking to be accredited by the national accrediting body, there's a few different steps. So there's pre-candidacy, where they submit their materials and are waiting to be accepted into candidacy. But once they are accepted into candidacy, that's the part that really takes the lengthy time period of 3 years, where they have on-site visits and they have checks to make sure they're still on pace to get accredited. So this would deal with the individual schools that are in candidacy for accreditation.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And this keeps us in equal with our surrounding states as well.
Yes, I believe so. And these provisions actually are not provisions that you will see in some other states. I went to a conference last year to try to find an answer to the solution in a way that would be clean, and talked to some individuals from the social work program from Minnesota, and they have a model just like this. So this was modeled after what Minnesota is currently using, and they've reported good results with a program like this. So I think there's some states that don't even have an answer to this issue, but I think with us implementing this, I think we will be taking a step ahead of some of the states that don't have it, and definitely at least on par with those that do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Blue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Rogers kind of made me think a little bit more. do we have to list the universities? Could we just not list them? Is there a reason why they're listed?
Thank you, Representative. I might defer to the revisor to speak to that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. From the drafting point of view, do you strictly have to add them? No. I think from the proponent's point of view, they want to be sure that St. Mary's in Leavenworth is covered. So I think under, like, if you were reading it under a strict reading, like, does St. Mary's meet the in candidacy program awaiting accreditation? I believe that's a true statement. So you wouldn't have to, but I think and this is common, that we list somebody who we know we are trying to cover, and then and that's why we say shall include but not be limited to, because we know there might be other people out, or excuse me, other institutions out there. We just aren't naming them, but they would still meet the provisions of the bill.
Thank you. And my follow-up question, and it is for Director Fye on this one, is are there only 2 programs right now in the state of Kansas that are doing this, such as the University of St. Mary's and Fort Hays?
I'm unsure how many are currently in candidacy right now. I do know that there are other schools, at least outside of Kansas, that are in candidacy that could potentially apply for licensure in Kansas. So this would go beyond at least the Reston school. But I, as far as the agency's perspective, we intend to treat all schools that are similarly situated consistently. So if one is named, that wouldn't affect how we would deal with them any differently. In terms of, we would follow the law, of course, but we would want to treat any schools that are in this online placement the same as any of the schools that were specifically listed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When they get this license, is it a national license or a state license?
So every state has jurisdictional authority to establish license requirements for their state. So this would be a license to practice in the state of Kansas.
I would challenge my representative friend from Hayes. There is no such thing as a simple bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative, and good point. Well taken. Any other questions for Director Fye? If not, Director Fye, thank you for your testimony before us today. And I will let the committee know that we are scheduled to work HB 2375 this Friday. So if you have any other questions in the interim, I'm sure the proponents would be glad to answer any questions you may have. And also that Friday meeting time was altered. It has been moved up to 11 a.m., same room, and that's all been approved. So try to get things moving a little quicker for everybody so you can get to your weekend. Next, I'd like to welcome for our, Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we have a water tour that I have to go on Friday morning. And so, I mean, I don't think it'll be a big deal for me to miss it. I don't see any problem with the bill. I'm not going to be objecting to it or offering any amendments or anything.
Thank you, Representative, for letting me know. Trying to do my best to accommodate everybody's schedule, but sometimes there are conflicts. So thank you for letting me know.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative,
Excuse me. All right, am I out of order again? Sorry.
I just wanted to do that, Representative. I didn't do it yesterday, so
sorry.
I'll give you the floor, Representative.
After yesterday's debacle with my telephone, I take one and pass them on. So they were bought at a discount, by the way, but I think they're still fresh. But I've learned my lesson. So, and since we're talking money, they're 100,000 grand bars. Is that what they are? Okay.
100 grand bars.
They were right at the beginning, right as you walked in the store. So I did a lot of work. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry again.
No, thank you. Thanks for the Valentine.
I brought some for everybody or not. I thought maybe more would be leaving by now. So no, there's some, if take them, that's fine. My wife says I can't have caramel. So
for those listening online, or even in the audience may not know, but there's kind of a tradition apparently in the Capitol that if your cell phone goes off and interrupts the committee meeting, then you owe the committee some sort of a special treat the next day. And so always make sure your phone is on silent or on vibrate, or just don't even bring it. So next, I'd like to welcome for this part of the committee meeting, President Mazicek from the Washburn University. President Mazicek has recently been come back to Kansas to serve as president of Washburn University. So we're delighted to have you before our committee today and learn about what Washburn University's priorities are for this next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Howe, and thank you, members of the committee, for the opportunity to come in front of you today and tell you a little bit about Washburn University, what we're doing to support the great state of Kansas, and to answer any questions that you might have. And I'll tell you a little bit. I am the new president at Washburn University. As Chairman Howe said, this is my 2 weeks on the job. And I think this is a great thing to be doing 2 weeks in. But I am not new to Washburn. So many of you might know that already. I spent 30 years of my career at Washburn University serving the institution in a number of different roles. 2 of my children are graduates, and probably almost all of my friends' family or kids are somehow associated with Washburn University. And so it runs deep in my blood and in my heart. And so I'm thrilled to be able to talk with you today. I guess I should also share, I am a Topeka native. I'm a Kansan, and no matter where you went to school in Kansas, I'm a Jayhawk. So I'm coming back home in so many different ways. So I wanted to talk about Washburn University today, and I just wanted to start off with our mission statement because I think it's important for me to talk about our institution. We were established in 1865, and we were established in our original charter documents as we wanted to make sure that we were open and we could provide education for all, no matter your gender, no matter your socioeconomic background, your religious beliefs, no matter your race, that you were able to study at Washburn University. And we have stayed true to that charter from 1865. We remain an open admission institution. And what does that mean? That means that if you graduate from a high school in in Kansas, the state of Kansas, you have a place to pursue education, higher education at Washburn University and Washburn Tech. And we are a teaching institution primarily, and focused on providing very personalized experiences in smaller classrooms in our university. We have a governance structure that's a little different than the other institutions, and I just always point that out. We're the only one like that public institution, 4-year institution in the state that has our own governing board. So we are coordinated by the Kansas Board of Regents, but we have an individual governing board that oversees our operations and everything that we do at Washburn University. We have about 48,000 alumni. 15,000 of them work right here in Shawnee County. 1,000 of them are law students or law alumni of that 15,000. We also associated with a technical school about 15 years ago, and we have begun to track the number of graduates from that program about 10 years ago. And we have about 3,000 graduates of our tech program that also work right here in Shawnee County. We are the top ranked public regional university in Kansas. We are 14th in the Midwest. We are very proud of that. We've been working diligently on pursuing the things that we think are important for our students and for our community, and that is what has resulted in our ranking. We do not chase the rankings, so I want to make sure that we say that. We chase our mission and serving our students. On the second page, it gives you a little bit of an overview of what Washburn University, how big we are, what we do. We have 3 campuses. 2 of which serve our technical programs and 1 of which serves our traditional 4-year types of programs. At Washburn University, we have about 5,460 students, over 200 programs. This is something that we are very committed to. So we are in this community, we serve a lot of different roles, and our goal when students come to us is to help them no matter what their goal is, whether it's to transfer to KU or K-State, or whether it's to get a certificate or a bachelor's degree or whatever it might be. We want to help them achieve their desired outcome. And we ask students every semester when they graduate, did you achieve your desired outcome from enrolling in Washburn University? 97% of our students that reply to our surveys tell us that we meet that goal. That makes us, that is important to us, and we follow that and we work on that diligently. Washburn Tech, we have about 1,200 students, 35 technical certificates and associate degrees. We have a 95% course completion rate, and we have about 73% of those students receive employment or are placed in our community upon graduation. Our students, about 2/3 of them are full-time students, and at Washburn University and at Tech, about 3/4 of them are full-time students. If you move to page 4, I would like to talk about our funding for, because we look a little different than some of the institutions that you might be looking at. And I'm going to focus on our university model versus our tech. And tech, as all of you know, is funded a little bit differently. And so we'll handle them separately. But we have really 3 primary sources of funding for our operating budget. And it is primarily our tuition and fees. It is our state appropriations that we receive from the state of Kansas, which we're very grateful for. And then we, due to our focus on Shawnee County in this region of the state, we do have a local appropriation that helps support our operation. And that is through the form of a sales tax that comes from Shawnee County. And then I think that it's important because you see the grants are a very large part, and that is it's probably about twice as big as it might be in the future. And the reason is that we were still, during this past year, we're still receiving ARPA funds in the amount of almost $12 million. And a large portion of this is also our Pell grants, end up in our grants. And so and almost 50% of our students are first gen, over 40% are Pell eligible students. And then we run our a few auxiliary operations on our main campus. And then for tech, of course, not surprisingly, the largest portion of their funding is from state appropriations. And of course, we're coordinated through TEA, just as along with all other technical colleges, and receive tiered and non-tiered funding to support the efforts at Washburn Tech. Then we move on to the next slide. I wanted to talk one more time about open access. And I just mentioned half of our students are first generation. Important for us to mention that 82% of our students are from Kansas. We are primarily a Kansas-focused school, and 50% of them are from Shawnee County. 75% of our graduates remain in Kansas, and that's something we're very proud of. We know that the work that we do at Washburn University directly impacts the workforce, and that many of our students, when they graduate, they stay right here in this great state of Kansas. And I want to spend just a minute talking about something that we're probably the most proud of. Actually, it's on the next page. I'll talk about it next time. But the first generation is an important component for what Washburn does and how we serve our students. And as a result of having such a high number of first generation students through the years, we are very focused on student success. And so I will move to slide 6. We have been in the student success business now for about 14 years, and we are doing many things that are nationally recognized. But probably one of the most important things that we strive for is we want to get our students across the graduation stage. We know that when our students enroll, that most of them who don't transfer out are wanting to get a degree. And so we've been very focused over the last 5 years on making sure we're doing everything we can to ensure that our students can cross the graduation stage at a high rate. We're at an open access institution. We graduate 54% of our students in 6 years, our full-time students in 6 years. I want to share that is a very high rate for an open access institution, and for us to be able to promise that to our students. We have been working on that, and we still have plans to increase that even further. And this is at a national level, this is a very high performance, and we're very proud of that. The next thing I wanted to share with you is we are very committed to helping our students graduate with low debt. Many of them, as I've shared, are first generation, and we've taken this very seriously. We have a very strong program for helping our students learn how to best finance and make decisions around the money that it takes to go to school. And so in the Midwest region, we have the 5th lowest debt when our students graduate. And then one of the most important things we did, we believe there are 2 things, but this is one of the most important things that we did to improve our graduation rates, is we adopted, you will probably hear other schools talk about math pathways. We've now been doing math pathways. We're moving into our 4th year to be able to see how that has made progress, and we have had good success. And we have that this is a national best practices model that helps students be in the correct math. And that was the single most that was the single highest gateway to being able to help our students cross the graduation stage, was to remove the barrier of not being able to be successful in math. And we changed the way that we teach the class. We did not change the content, really, change the way that we teach and the way that we support the students as they go through the class, and have had very good success. We have more that we're going to do, and we can share that another day, but it's very, very exciting for us to be able to share that. Okay. Next, we will talk about what we're doing to help attract more students into higher education. And we just chose a few of the pathways that we've been working on that I thought would illustrate what we believe is important for us to be able to do. And we are the 4-year partner. We are the only 4-year partner at this time in the corrections, in educating individuals that are in our correctional programs in the state. And we are focused right now in the Topeka area as we have launched these programs. And we just did a presentation on this to our board last week, 2 weeks ago, almost 2 weeks ago. And it's fascinating to learn what an education can do for students that are in correctional facilities. It is the number one factor that you can provide, or one intervention that reduces recidivism by almost 50%. And so this is an investment by the state. We partnered from the beginning when we were able to get second chance Pell, and we're able to begin to offer programs at the associate's and the bachelor's level. At Washburn Tech, we have been involved in the high school level of correctional education for many, many years. And I would say that has probably been since 2010. And I think it's important to see that what we have done. So we've touched 195 students. We have 67 that are going to graduate or going to work on their Associates of Liberal Studies. We have provided 50 GEDs while they are in correctional facility. At the Juvenile Correctional Complex, we have had about 50% of those students involved in our technical certificate programs. And in the last 10 years, those students have been able to get 179 students have been able to earn certificates. And I think that what I'd like to share is the part that we are working on now is determining how, when they actually do matriculate from the correctional facility and they're not quite done with their degree, how are we able to help them make sure they are able to finish their degree before they leave? And we have a quote from one of our high school students that said, "I'm going to do something so I get to stay here so I can finish my degree." And we're like, that's wonderful. You want to finish your education, but we are going to find a different way for that to happen than for you to have to stay here. So it is life changing. The people that are involved in these programs, we actually did it with all current staffing. The state provided a grant so that we could hire someone to the liaison inside the correctional facility. Has been game changing and have a heart for serving. And we look forward to being able to expand these programs in the future. Next, we are our veterans. We have been working diligently to support our veterans in our community. And I want to talk specifically about our educational pathways. One of the things that we were a lead in, especially in the health fields, nursing and our allied health and our behavioral health fields, we were able to go in and look at the training that happens for different pathways inside the military, what they learn in those specific areas, and we were able to articulate it to our curriculum and give veterans credit for what they have done in the military, and then developed very clear articulated pathways for them to get an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. And we were leaders in this effort in both of those areas. We're very, very proud of that work. We also are doing some training. The technical school is doing training at Fort Riley that is being nationally recognized and in developing a pathway into logistics through our technical program for people that are getting ready to leave the military in Fort Riley. Very excited about that. Then if you move on to slide 10, I wanted to talk just a few moments about law. We do have, most people don't expect that. There are two law schools in the state of Kansas, and we are one of the two law schools, and we've had a law school since 1903. And so our law school has been around for 120 years, and we have been serving the state of Kansas for that entire time. And I know that you have probably heard when Chief Justice Lukert spoke, she spoke about the shortage of attorneys in rural Kansas. And we have been working over the last really 8 years to really further develop our ability to help students begin to see what it would be like to choose rural law, or if they have a rural law, if they come from rural, that they can choose that pathway when they are in our program. And so we have developed a series of externships where our students can go out and practice under an attorney in rural practice, and to learn what that is like. And we've had very good success with that. We have developed a partnership with Kansas State to help some of the folks that work more in that agricultural background to find a pathway through Washburn University. And to help increase the number of lawyers, this is something we're very proud of. We have developed a law early admissions program that allows a student to be able to finish their law degree and their bachelor's degree in 6 years. They do 3 years undergrad, then they are admitted into law school, and their first year of law counts as their undergrad. They have that's very simplified. If my faculty were listening, they would say that was too simplified. But that is what we've been working towards, and we have partnerships with Fort Hays, Pittsburgh State, Baker, and with Washburn at this time on very clearly articulated pathways. And then finally, we've created some flexibility. The ABA allowed for online learning for 1/3 of a course of study in the School of Law, and this only happened 3 years ago. And we developed very quickly the opportunity for students to be able to go and and work. This is why it helped rural law to be able to go and work where they might want to eventually work and complete their last year of law school online and under the supervision of other attorneys. And this has been very exciting. This is not a pathway that's for everyone, but we have about a quarter of our students each year are interested in pursuing this pathway. And that is our effort to help enhance rural lawyers and to grow the number of lawyers in the state of Kansas. And then one of the things that we know that being a part of Topeka, we are in a vibrant business community, and we know that we play a significant role in being able to ensure that our community thrives and grows and that it has the workforce that it needs to be able to thrive and grow. And so just a few examples of ways that we work with our community partners and develop new programs that respond to their needs. And so healthcare at Washburn University, our health related professions, those majors are about 35% of our majors, so it's significant. Many of our students stay right here in this region and serve the rural area and the city of Topeka, Lawrence, and on into Kansas City. And there was a significant need. And over the years, we have developed, we have a certificate for nurse practitioners in mental health where NPs can come back and this is an online program and they can receive that certification. And this was really in answer to trying to meet the needs of mental health in our state and being able to provide more mental health folks in our clinics and in our doctor's offices. We developed a Bachelor's of Health Services Administration, and that was requested from our healthcare partners in our community. And we are getting ready to integrate. So we have all levels of training for health-related fields. We do not, of course, have a medical doctor. We don't do physician assistant. We don't do that, but nursing care and allied health fields. We have from certificates all the way to doctorates in nursing practice, and we are looking to integrate and bring them together so that we can give them the best educational experience possible and to prepare them for the work world when they leave. And so you'll be hearing more about that. And I want to say thank you. We received some initial funding to help us start on this process last year when you gave us $3 million. And we are hoping that we are planning, I don't even want to say hoping, we are currently planning how we will be able to bring together all of our simulation from across all of our campuses into one location. And that's what we're going to use those funds for so that we can integrate all of our healthcare. And then I can't talk about economic development or workforce development without talking what we do in our business school and to support our entrepreneurial environment in our community and our small business development center. So we are very focused in partnering in ways that make a difference for business growth. And we have partnered with our Go Topeka Economic Development organization. We've done like a Shark Tank. We call it a pitch competition. We've had 163 students compete, and then we rewarded about $200,000 to them to be able to start and develop their businesses. We do have some new programs that we developed in direct response to industry requests, and we are just launching our business data analytics this year. We launched our business data analytics program. And then, of course, we have an entrepreneurship and innovation track within our bachelor's program in the School of Business. And then one of our highlights also is our Small Business Development Center, which we've had for many years. We serve 12 counties. We serve Riley County. I think I have them all listed here. But we serve Riley County, Shawnee County, and all the surrounding, and go up north and a little bit east, and are able to meet the needs of businesses in determining how they put together initial business plans and then how they put together plans to grow and expand and grow jobs in our community. We're very, very proud of what we do at the Small Business Development Center. And then I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Oh, and I will tell you, we have regularly competed nationally, internationally in our business plan competition as a result through our entrepreneurship program and innovation program. And we place regularly in the top 3. And then finally, I wanted to talk about Washburn Tech because this is one of the areas that we really do touch employers quickly because those programs happen very quickly, and so it's very industry driven. We stand up programs, shut down programs faster in the technical side. We have advisory boards that meet on a regular basis that provide input on what we're teaching and what we might need to change so that we can best meet the needs of our employers when they leave, and to make sure that we have the best work experiences for our students as they're working through and learning their skills. We also have been recipients of the Kansas Promise Scholarship, and I think it's important to say we've been very lucky because we've been able to serve 124 students. And you might note that about over half of those are in the nursing and allied health fields. That seems to be a strong need in our community, and the remaining are primarily in manufacturing and construction. We do have a registered apprenticeship program, and we are growing that now. And one of the things that we do also is we do have GED and AOK. So what that does is it allows us AOK programs. A student comes in and they get their GED at the same time they get an industry recognized credential, so that when they're finished, they have a job skill, not just the GED, but they have a job skill. That is supported by the state of Kansas, and we see such success in changing students' lives with that. And that summarizes my presentation today. And I just want to say thank you again for letting me talk with you for a brief time about what is happening at Washburn University. We are dedicated to ensuring that we have a pathway for students to come to Washburn University, learn, and pursue their educational goals and dreams. And we will do whatever we can to support them so they can cross the graduation stage and achieve their goals for the future. And we are committed to that mission. And we so much appreciate the support that we receive from the state in so many different ways and grants that we received, and we could not do it without you.
Thank you, President Mazachek. We appreciate your testimony before the committee today. Would you be able to stand for questions?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Just to start off, going over the governor's budget recommendation, there is some money recommended for inflation adjustment, which is $437,700. What would you use that inflation adjustment for? Do you use it towards trying to keep tuition low, or is there some other areas?
So that's a great question, and it will have the impact of helping us minimize any increases in tuition that would be required, but it is going to go to help us cover the inflationary costs that we've had in running our operation, and we can come up with several immediately, but probably the most important one is energy. Our cost of energy for that dollars will consume quite a bit of that inflation, and that does help us. That does help us keep our costs low for the students.
Speaking of energy, because you're a municipal university and you have an appropriation from county sales tax, do you also have any other advantages in terms of negotiating electric or gas rates with the utilities?
I am not aware that we have any advantage that any other university or institution might have.
Thank you. Also, in the governor's budget recommendation, the agency, Kansas Board of Regents, had extended the request for cybersecurity, and the governor, I guess, partially recommends a certain amount of funding. That's $450,000. You had requested $890,000. So I'm trying to wrap my head around partial requests. Is that going to be enough to address the concern of cybersecurity at Washburn? Or is there a thought, well, maybe this is enough to get us started. Next year, we could maybe finish whatever project it may be. So I'm just trying to get an understanding about a partial request. You know, is it going to be enough to really make a difference?
So how would I answer that? Is it enough? It's not enough for us to do everything that we think we need to do. However, it will help us get down the pathway significantly in overcoming some of our shortcomings in cybersecurity. And the primary areas that we were looking at were, of course, upgrading some outdated systems. So we might not be able to do as many of the systems, but we could prioritize and do the ones that have the most risk, and to enhance our ability to monitor and respond as soon as we see that anything is happening that should not be happening. And training is in there. Those were the three areas we were seeking. We believe that is a scalable ask, and we believe we could make a significant difference with what is being recommended. If you were to ask me, would you rather have the entire amount? Of course, that we could achieve everything, but we believe we can make a significant difference with what is in the governor's budget.
Thank you, President. In follow up to that, I'm just trying to understand the budget process, being a new member of the committee and chair, but do you have any opportunity in discussions with Board of Regents or even the governor's office, you know, arriving at 450,000? Do you have any input on that? How you arrived at, well, I guess I should ask the governor because but do you have any line of communication to the administration when it comes to arriving at a certain number that's a partial funding number?
I'm going to respond, and you'll correct me if I say this wrong. But I believe that she reviewed our requests and that she provided the dollars that she thought that she could provide for our request. Did we talk with the governor? No, I didn't think so.
Okay, when I look at partial requests, you know, sometimes I don't see the whole picture. And so, you know, for some projects, you know, you have phase one and phase two. So I didn't know if it was something like that. Like, we'll get you through phase one, or next year we'll come back for phase two. So just trying to get
we did not
Okay.
propose it that way, but as is true in many IT projects, there is a place where you can get so far with certain functionality, and then we'll probably come back next year and ask for the rest of the funds so we can get to where we believe we need to be. But it does help us get started immediately.
And President Mazurchak, when you talk about cybersecurity, are we talking about hardware updating computer systems, or are we talking about actual network security?
Yes.
Or both?
It's both, yes. And training. Of course, you know, so much of our security has to do with what we as humans do every day.
Okay, and lastly, thank you, committee, for indulging all of my questions. It was the Washburn Bright Center. It was a request, but it was deleted from the governor's budget recommendation. Could you tell me a little bit more about that project and what that means for your campus?
Yes, so we were looking for that initiative to help us be able to support activities in our community and their interest in growing the number of businesses that we have and the number of jobs that we have. And we believed that this was an area where we could help entrepreneurs, kind of those people who invent things in the garage, that we could help them in their technology development, and that we would be able to, and probably the core of this is being able to help them navigate how they can take their product, Kansas product, and pursue global opportunities for distribution and for the capital that's needed to be able to do that, and for the expertise for global trade.
Thank you, President. And is that a money would be for an actual building, or
No.
the activity or programming of?
It's mostly for staffing and the resources that we need to be able to provide that, but not for a building.
Thank you. And in terms of your funding from Shawnee County, the sales tax, how long is that authorized, and is it often renewed every 5-10 years?
It is in perpetuity, And it is important. I probably should share that there are many funds that we do not have access to that other public four-year institutions have. We fund all of our own buildings. We don't have access to those funds that might come from the state. And so I want to be thoughtful about what those monies get used for over the long run. So when you go by our plant and you look at our campus, it comes from those three primary sources of funds, in addition to wonderful donors.
Thank you, President. And my last question has to do with need-based assistance. And in the governor's budget request, there's a certain block amount of funding that would be made available, but I think it's only for the Regent universities. Is that your understanding too?
Oh, I've seen it in two places, and one, we don't appear in the language, and another, in the original that I saw, we did get an allocation of $1.7 million for need-based aid, and I would request that if it is missing from the final legislation, that it be added so that Washburn University students, many of whom are from Kansas, might also have access to that need-based aid.
Thank you, President Mazachek. Other questions from the committee? Representative Rogers.
I had that long a list this time, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. President Mazachek, I will tell you the same thing I told about a year ago. I think today, with President Linton, welcome home. So
thank you.
It's amazing how sometimes you're there, but you have to go somewhere else before you come back home. And so we've had that a couple different places. Basically, the one question I have, and I know we're focusing on Washburn, this has to do with Washburn Tech. Yesterday, as we talked about the tech schools, it said there was over $43 million in deferred maintenance at Washburn Tech. Do you have a way to, I mean, is that right? I mean, I mean, I understand the campus, we drive by it, we understand that, but is there a plan, or how does that work in with your campus? Because you've done a lot of construction on the main campus. So how does that all fit together?
So that's it's complex. That's a very good question. And this is the uniqueness of technical colleges. So when Tech came in to join us, we have always maintained their funding stream is so different than the primary campus. We wanted to make sure that we were not going to either shortchange one campus or the other. And the reality is, in the technical colleges, there are not a lot of dollars for investment in capital. We inherited that building dates back to the high schools. And when we inherited that building, it still looked like a high school. And we have done quite a bit of work to it, but there is still a lot to be done. HVAC systems are old, roofs are old, parking lots are old. We haven't built new structures, and we really need to build new structures. And the state did support last year with a 1-to-1 match, the opportunity for us to build a new structure for manufacturing. But that will be the first structure we've built on that campus since it was owned by the high schools. So we do not have funds that were a part of Washburn University before Tech joined us that are dedicated, that were dedicated to Tech, and Tech did not bring any of those funds with them. Is that fair? Did I answer your question?
Somewhat, yes.
I have to be careful. I will be happy to follow up with you on that.
Right. I'm kind of curious. That number kind of alarmed me a little bit. And so, I mean, just if there's a plan and realizing that the structure of that is a bit, and so when I see $43 million, I'm going, we have buildings falling down. I mean, we offer them up, or what, because I know it's a fairly sprawling campus, all things considered. I know HVAC systems are.
Yeah. So I appreciate you saying that, and I'm new and I don't know that number.
Well, probably a long-term follow-up, just kind of as the whole thing pieces together.
And we will follow up with you on that. And I am not familiar with that number.
That's fine. In the supplementary answering the questions, I want to maybe discuss the Washburn philosophy on the possibility of eliminating out-of-state tuition. I know everybody kind of has their own philosophy of it, and I'm curious of how Washburn came up with that, and how you possibly would pursue something like that to where we would eliminate out of state tuition.
We are actively pursuing and developing a plan to eliminate out of state tuition. And it is easier for us, I'll be honest, because we do not have as many out of state students. Our focus has been Kansas students for many years. And and so we don't have as big of a hurdle to overcome as other schools in the state of Kansas might have. And we are actively developing the plan to be able to eliminate that. Right now, we provide in-state tuition to, of course, all of the states that surround Kansas and a few other places. And it is very easy for a student to get in-state tuition after their first semester at Washburn University. And so we don't necessarily get their in-state tuition for their entire career while they're at Washburn. So we feel like we are in a very strong position to eliminate in-state tuition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions from the committee? Seeing none, President Mazachek, I really appreciate your time before the committee today. We look forward to working with you as the budget process continues, and certainly welcome any of the committee members to follow up with Washburn. If you have any additional questions, they're always glad to take your questions, and they're very responsive. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I will note to the committee on the post-secondary education system-wide document you were given earlier this week when KBOR came in. Washburn is listed on page 7 and 14 if you're looking for specific line items. So make sure to keep that document handy as we're going through the budget recommendations. Any announcements from the committee? Seeing none, we do have a meeting 1:30 tomorrow, I believe still, right, Phyllis? Okay, she's giving me the yes, we do. So look forward to seeing everybody then. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.